Welcome to Unemployed and Afraid, a podcast that explores the glorious mess of building your own business with the people doing it. I'm your host and fellow business builder, Kim Curtin. Thank you for being here. Let's get into some good, honest, small business chat. Hello, it's good to have you here for a look inside business, another human's business, and their journey of building in real terms, without the big PR headlines and without smoothing over the inevitably challenging stuff we all go through. And we are so lucky to hear from this guest today, listener. It's Lauren Karan, and she's founder and director of a tailored recruitment solutions business and the host of a brilliant podcast, all of which you'll hear about in the chat. We cover so much gold here, like learning to find a sense of satisfaction outside of achieving everything on your never-ending to-do list, finding confidence within your business purpose, rewriting the rule books of work structures, the importance in those angry, frustrated, sad, highly stressful moments in your business building, putting your knowledge, values, and beliefs out there to attract the right clients, long-term thinking in networking and supporting others with real value. There is such a lesson in value in this chat. The surprising role business planning has in your potential, and an argument for outsourcing the stuff that you can actually do yourself. It's a banger of a conversation with business inspo for you through every single minute, so let's get into the chat. I'm here with the vibrant Lauren Karan, founder and director of tailored recruitment solutions company Karan Co, and host of the Building Doors podcast. Karan Co exists with a purpose to provide a recruitment and retention service that will transform a business. They believe that people are the foundation of growth, success, and profitability, and go beyond the initial hiring process into the onboarding process, as well as coach, consult, and provide solutions to attraction and retention challenges, ensuring employees are embedded in a business and can see their own pathway for growth. And now the Building Doors podcast came about after being stuck too long indoors during the time we shall not mention, and trying to balance having kids while still maintaining her business. Lauren created the podcast to give a voice to people who were paving their own way. It's about diversity, inclusion, recruitment, attraction, retention, talent shortages, and of course, the juggle of motherhood. As a sought-after industry leader, Lauren's expert advice and viewpoints have been published in HR Leader, IT Wire, Inside Small Business, Kosh's Business Builders, and Dynamic Business across a range of topics. And Lauren was also announced as the Mumpreneur Awards Bronze Winner 2023 for Professional Business Services. And this acknowledgement places Lauren in the ranks of Australian mothers in business, breaking the stereotypes and making a significant impact on the Australian economy. She's building a successful business with purpose, and I cannot wait to hear all about it. Lauren, welcome to Unemployed and Afraid.
Thank you so much, Kim, for having me. What a lovely bio. Thank you for that.
Pretty easy to write. You're doing some fantastic stuff, and it is wonderful to hear. Yes, so grateful for you to be sharing your story of how, what, why, all of the things. But before we get into that, my first question is more personal. I'd love to know how your best friend might describe you.
Oh, that's a good one. I will say it's definitely something that my kids describe me as, and my team that I work with. I would say kind. Kindness is probably my first inherent value that touches everything that I do. I do believe in being kind to people, being kind to candidates, being kind to clients. I think there's not enough kindness in the world. That's probably the first one. And then the other one that she would describe me as would be relentless and tenacious. I don't give up. I don't give up easily. And then I'm also a little bit goofy. So everyone that knows me knows that I have moments where I forget where my keys are. I'm always thinking of a million different things at once. And so that often means I just do silly stuff all the time, which provides my friends endless entertainment. So that's probably how they describe me.
I can really relate to that last one. I am constantly, on this podcast, I could say something really eloquent, or if I'm speaking or whatever, say something really on point, be like, yeah. And then I would just make the worst, dog's breakfast of a metaphor or an analogy, and just completely muck my words up and be like, wow, what? Wow. What was that?
Yeah. You know what it is? I think I thought of this as well. When you're an entrepreneur, when you're running a business, I always feel like in my head I have a million things on at once. And so that just means I forget the menial details of, where was I going into that room for, or what was I actually supposed to be doing, because I've actually done 5 other things in the meantime since I intended to do that initial thing. Like, it's a little joke in our team that it's one of my biggest strengths is the ability to multitask, but it also can derail me as well.
And now I happen to know that you studied psychology, so this is a loaded suggestion, but I feel like we should team up together to do some sort of study on the effects small business has on your short-term memory, because I reckon there's something in it.
I reckon there is as well. I don't know if, one thing that I have is I have a never-ending to-do list. I was talking to my team about this the other day, and they were saying, oh, you get to the end of the day, and I really want to have that to-do list done. I was like, my to-do list is never done. I'm getting up, in the night and things like that at times, like writing stuff. I'll be on the weekend and think of stuff that I want to do in the business, or, the to-do list is never ending. And I've learned to gain comfort in what I call a rolling to-do list. And that means that things come off it, and just as quickly as they come off it, things come on it as well. So that's definitely something I've become really comfortable with, is what I call the rolling to-do list.
And that for me translates perfectly into when you're leading into some time off, be it just like one day off on the weekend or an actual holiday, really trying to fight that desire to have everything done before you go, and just knowing that, do you know what, you won't. Just do the absolute basics and give yourself a break. It's a really quite a learned behavior, as opposed to working in a 9-to-5 environment where you can kind of wrap things up in a bow and then put your out of office on, and you might think about it a little bit. The odd email might come through, but it's just a totally different ballgame when it's your own thing.
100%. And I think as well, it's gaining satisfaction. You know how especially if you're achievement orientated, right? You often gain satisfaction out of completing stuff. I've completed my to-do list, and that completion is that achievement, right? And so I think for me, I've learned to gain achievement. I look at my list now at the start of the day, and I go, okay, what is the really important work that has to get done here? Like, what is going to turn the needle in the business that I have to focus on today? What can I not leave, basically, and I'll focus on that stuff first, and then when I have the time left over, I'll get to the other stuff. And I think that's the only way I can maintain my sanity with how many ideas I have on that piece of paper and that rolling to-do list, and then reflecting at the end of the day, and as many of us do in business, what did we achieve, how do we get closer to our goals? Then you can look at that list and kind of go, I hit the big stuff. I did the big stuff that mattered, and the other stuff, I didn't finish it all, but then there's always tomorrow, and we can pick it up again. And that's the same when you go on leave. I know for a fact that not everything's going to be finished, but I know that the big milestones, the big goals that I wanted to do will be, because I'm prioritizing them.
I love it. And I love that we've gone just straight in deep, straight away. 2 podcasters on a podcast makes for good chat.
So true.
So I want to go back a little bit, kind of well before the rolling to-do list and Karan Co and the Building Doors podcast. Who were you?
I honestly think before I had my own business, I had nowhere near the confidence that I have now in who I am. And I think for me, I feel like everyone has that journey where they're trying to figure it out. And I don't know if other business owners feel the same, but I think sometimes if you've had a goal of having a business, you have values in mind, and you have a purpose or an impact that you want to create, until you really land in that, you may not feel the level of, there's nothing like a level of confidence of going, okay, we may not be making money this week, we might make money next week, I don't know where that's going to land, but I'm confident now that I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. Before that, I was trying a lot of different stuff. I wanted to be a singer at one point, and I was turned off the entertainment industry, I won't lie. That's what put me off singing, not singing itself, but I went on X Factor. I was doing a lot of singing and getting close, but not quite getting there. And then recognizing met with some managers that said I needed to learn an instrument. And what happened is I'd been told the things that I needed to do to get to the next level as a musician. and I didn't want to do them and I wasn't driven to do them. And for me, I kind of learned before having a business that if I really want to do something, I'll do it. I'm like a hell yeah. Like, you know that one where they say, I won't swear in the podcast, it's either a no or it's a hell yeah, right? So I'm either really kind of exceptionally good at something and I apply myself at it and I follow it and I commit to it. I'm either all in or I'm kind of not, which means like I'm all in on the business, not all in on cooking at home. Right? Not all in on that and not great at it as a result, right? Give it a good red hot go, but I have to be all in on something to achieve it. So that's probably a bit about me beforehand. And then I went in and I studied psychology and I was always just figuring out what I wanted to do. I talk to people a lot through the work that I do that are trying to figure out what do I want to do when I grow up. And I'm like, you're not going to know that right away, right? You're going to try stuff and learn stuff as you go, and bits and pieces of you are going to come out that are going to influence what you ultimately want to do. And that's a journey. And I think that I kind of understood that because I was naturally quite innovative and trying stuff and going, I tried recruitment working for construction companies for 10 years. I enjoyed it, but I didn't want to do it forever. Then I went for 2 years doing coaching and learning and development. I was a therapist for children with autism for a period of time as well. You know, I tried lots of different stuff, but all of those pieces of the puzzle that was my life now impact who I am today. So I wasn't someone at 12 that when I want to be a doctor and then just followed that path. Like that wasn't the journey for me.
Oh, I mean, I really enjoy the variability to what your background has been. I have many, many questions about the entertainment side of things, but I will hold those for the sake of the listener. But what I really like is how that comes back to that confidence in self. I think there's something in us when we're trying to find our way through different careers or trying things on for size and dipping our toe into spaces and you know, figuring out what it is that makes us really fire up, whether it be as an employee or as a business owner, is that confidence that eventually develops that you don't see yourself through what you do. And you start to remove a little bit of that identity factor in it. You know, I am a this, so and I do a this. And then, you know, when you put that down and put something else up, that learned behavior, if you do it enough times, put something down, try something else and put something down, you eventually be like, well, I'm just me and I'm going to try a bunch of really cool shit and people are going to understand it or they're not. That's not my problem. I'm just going to try it anyway and it will lead me somewhere fantastic.
Absolutely. And I think too often we try to put ourselves in like this little neat box that, you know, I want to go study and I want to become a lawyer and that's what I want to do. Or I want to go study, I want to become a doctor. And it's just the reality is the human framework isn't like that. We're not like that. We're meant to explore and discover ourselves. And, you know, I look at pictures of myself in my 20s and I was so worried about, you know, something happened to me when I hit my 30s that I just kind of started to own myself a lot more and not be as concerned about what everyone would think about the choices that I made. And that's why I think starting a business in your 30s was, for me, perfect, because all of a sudden it was like, well, I know what I want to do, and it's going to land with some people and it's not going to land with other people. Some people, of course, told me I was crazy. Why do you want to go to, because recruitment agencies don't have, you want to start a what? They don't necessarily have the best reputation in some industries. So I think that side of things, you don't know what you want to do when you're trying lots of different stuff, but it's very important to still do it. You take away, that's what I say to people all the time that say to me, you know, I've had a few jobs that I didn't love and, you know, I feel like I've wasted my time. I said, you haven't wasted your time. You've learnt lessons from each of those jobs that will impact what you do next, whether you do start your own business, whether you do work somewhere else, all of that is not wasted time.
Oh, absolutely. And you often don't realize how non-wasted it is until you're in the seat and you're like, oh shit, that's really helpful. That's really helpful knowledge that I can now use for this new thing. You're exactly right. So tell me about the seed of Karan Co. So the moment before you said, I'm going to start a recruitment agency, and people started going, what? How did that start to seed for you? And what did it look like as you started thinking it through?
So I was freelancing to this other agency or recruitment business, and I left on really good terms with them. I have a lot of respect for them, and they taught me a lot around recruitment and how I wanted to do it. And so you have contractors in your career, and I had this lady that had worked for me on contract, and she was really, really good, right? And I remembered her, and she went off to have a baby. And at this stage, I was working 3 days a week, majority from home. I had a 3-year-old, and I started working as a freelancer when my daughter was 3 months old. So my first baby, my husband jokes that I did renovations, and then my second baby, I decided to start freelancing and then eventually fund a business because I like to be busy, Kim. So what happened there is I was working and calling this lady, right, over and over again for jobs. And she kept saying, she said, I want to return to work, but I want to work from home. I can't get childcare for my daughter. I want to be able to work. And I just had this aha moment. I thought, well, I can train you. And she goes, but I want to work remote. And I said, well, I can train you remote. Why not? Because that's the way my brain works, right? Like, why not? So we did. Like, I started training her. And that was the first experience I'd really had of mentoring and seeing the impact that I could have on someone else's life and family, because she's since had another child. That was the first time, or the moment, that I started to go, this is bigger than me. It's not even just about, yes, I love recruitment and I have a vision that I want to work closer with less clients that share the same values we do, and clients that I can really truly help and show them how hiring can impact the growth of your business. Yes, that's one side of it. But I've worked flexibly. I've got a young family. Surely there's other mums like me that want the same thing and had the same work ethic I do. So I hired her, and then she was my first start member, and then it just started building from there. And then I had lunch with a friend who owned a recruitment business, and she said, you're just doing it. So I think sometimes you need that little kick, like, because I don't know if other people do this, but I ruminated this for a while. I was like, I know I want to do this, but who does a remote business model full of mums? Like, that's no one's doing that. So, will that work? I mean, I've been doing it. Is that gonna work? And are people gonna think it's weird because, we're doing something really different? And anyway, that's kind of how the initial seed was planted. And I think the thing that I remember most about that is it gave me goosebumps just talking about it. It became bigger than me, because now it's way bigger than me. It's all the clients we help, all the people we put into jobs, but it's also all the mums that work in the business, their kids. Their kids love that. The kids say, can we work for Karan Co when we're older? And they get to be with them in school holidays. They go to the events. Like, I'm very passionate, and the passion that built inside of me as well is to try and show another way, because I did want to have a role where we kind of challenge the traditional working environment or the traditional work model that when I became a parent didn't suit me anymore. And I felt like everybody was trying to tell me that I had to adjust. And I was like, well, hang on. Can we do a bit of adjusting backwards and forwards as well, where I can create a model where I can have both? And that's where Karan Co was born.
That's wonderful. How did it feel to take on staff members at a fairly early stage of a business, in terms of the fiscal responsibility of that, but also the human-based responsibility? Okay, so now it's on me to build a business that's going to sustain both of us, all of us, as we keep going. What was that experience like for you?
So initially, this is the really interesting thing that happened. Initially, when I'd first started, I felt like I was responsible, and I was felt like I was exhausting myself a bit, because I was responsible for generating enough income to pay everybody, pay myself, get a profit. So I took that accountability on myself. And it was a really good business coach that turned around and said to me, it is not your responsibility to run, like, Karan Co isn't just you anymore. It is a business, and it benefits all of you and all of your families. Therefore, the responsibility is divided with all staff. So it is your role to make sure that everybody on the bus, that is Karan Co, is contributing, driving revenue, improving profitability, all of the things you need them to do to keep the bus moving forward. Because if you try and do it yourself, you just will run yourself ragged. That's when I started to, I'm not going to lie, that's when I started to enjoy it more. When I took that onus off myself. There was a time when I just remember bawling to my husband, and I was like, I think this is so hard. Like, no one told me it was going to be this hard, because I'm trying to work, I'm trying to be there for my staff, I've got BAS and tax and all these commitments, and I constantly feel like I take 10 steps forward and then the tax man says, here's 10 steps back. Like, that's those emotions that you've got, because you're hit with big BAS bills when you've got staff as well. You've got all of those extra layers to think of. I do think in your business, you have to have that moment when you go, oh, hell, what am I doing? And you cry and you kick and stomp and you like, why does it have to be this hard? You have to have that moment, I feel, to fully really appreciate. And then my husband just drilled it back to me and said, why are you doing what you do? Take it back to your why. Why do you want to do this? Do you want to go to work for somebody else? Is that what you want to do because this is hard now? Is that what we're going to do? We're just going to go back and work? And he's like, I was like, well, we know I can't do that. And he's like, exactly. And he goes, and what about you're saying that it's really hard? Like, what do you want to do? And I think he was always one to call me out on and kind of pull me out to the facts. And what the facts was it was going to be hard, yes, but the payoff was worth it.
I had to laugh when you talk about BAS because it's just like my eyes just glaze as soon as I think about these things, because, you know, the financial obligations of a directorship of a company set up. I mean, I don't know if it's just me and my relationships with people who teach me these things, but I feel like they only ever give me like the top line detail about what is involved in BAS, what it means, what the responsibilities are over a calendar year period, all of the things. I want to know it all now, and I want to know it ahead of time, and I want to know the intimate details of it. Bit of a toxic trait. I like to have my finger in every pie in my business and make sure that I'm across everything, but my eyes just glaze over because I'm like, oh, it's just one of those things where you're like, okay, what's this now? Now I have to learn about all this. Okay, now I have to pay for all of this. Okay, this is another thing. This is another surprise. And then there's insurances, and then there's all of these things that you're having to learn and get your head around and plan for that you can't possibly think about when you're getting started. You know, your job when you're getting started is to build a brand that's recognizable to your target market. It's to find clients. It's to sell yourself. It's to promote yourself. It's to train. It's to work out when the right time is to outsource versus do yourself. It's the responsibility of other people. And I'm interested probably in the client part of that, because I think recruitment, from what I know from the outset, is a very competitive environment and a very competitive landscape. So with all of that, with learning all of those things, how did you go about just landing that first client and then the one after?
So I've worked in the one industry for a very long, the construction and heavy engineering industry I'd worked in for a very long time. So since graduating, my first job was with a big construction business called John Holland after I'd done a couple of years in agency. So I had a strong reputation in one market that I'd worked in. And one of the things that I'm still passionate about is I always, no matter who a person is that I deal with, whether it's the receptionist through to the CEO, I treat everybody with respect. I call people back. I always have. I'll always, if I say I'm going to do something, I do something. I deliver it. I'm a person of my word. And I have a lot of old school values or, you know, traditional, I call them country values. You know, I have those values of doing, you know, a handshake deal, all of that stuff. I had built that reputation. So getting my first client, I actually had them follow me. So I had one who actually ended up going on a retainer to support our business. It was just such a good thing. So many amazing men, I'm going to be honest, so many amazing men who wanted to support what we were doing, who knew me and knew what I was about. I think if people know, like, trust you, right? If they know that it's your business and what you believe aligns with what they believe, the rest of it works. It does just work. But then I think when I landed my first client, I was negotiating for ages. I thought, is this ever going to come off? You know, like we're going back, you know, when you're sending the proposal and now's not the right time, because I needed them on that retainer to kind of kickstart our cash flow, right? And when they finally signed off, I was so excited. And then I think it is from that first client you gain more and more confidence. And then you are also, so when we finished year one and started to move into the second year, I started to know then what my ideal client was. And I don't think you know that. I mean, kudos to you if you do when you start. But to me, a good client's any client when you're trying to start a business initially, because you're trying to get the work in and the revenue to build that brand, build that credibility and build those reviews. But always for me, it was always about adding value. And I was doing that beforehand, you know, putting out articles on LinkedIn. And I put my whole self out there, what I believe, whether people are going to believe it or not. I'm super passionate about the impact great recruitment can have. And I just put that out there. And I don't know if this is, I'm going to be woo-woo here as well, but I think putting the right energy out there, if you really believe what you do and you come from a good place in your business and your clients see that, they are going to trust you to help them. And they're going to know, even when things go wrong, which things don't always go right in business either, they know that you've got the right values and ethics behind you because you put it out there. They see it in your branding. They see it in what you put in socials. They see it in the way that you deal with them and everybody in their business. So I think that old school, do what you say you're going to do, put yourself out there. And that does mean putting the ego aside and reaching out to people, networks you haven't seen for a while. No coffee is a wasted coffee. You never know what's going to happen from a cup of coffee. If somebody needs your help, help them. I had somebody that needed help a while ago, was made redundant. I went and met with them. Now, other recruitment businesses will go, oh, well, why would we meet this person? They've been made redundant. We don't have a job for them. That's short-term thinking. Long-term thinking is, I know this person. I value this person. They need my help. I don't know if anything will come of it, but I'm going to give them my help. And guess what? That client gave us a general manager role recently. We placed 5 people into their business. People don't forget. People will never forget how you make them feel. So make sure every time that you do deal with a person that you leave them feeling better than when they started talking to you.
That's really powerful advice. I think it was Wade Kingsley, actually, who I interviewed a while back. He's got an incredible business called The Ideas Business. And he said to me something along the lines of, you already know your first 100 clients. And that really stuck with me. And I think it was probably at that time where, you have to look and go, all right, so where are these people? Where is this network that I potentially in a business forum have neglected? I think a lot of us as business owners find ourselves in that place, and you go, oh, okay, for me, it was LinkedIn. All right, I've got a community there of amazing people I've worked with, people who know how I work and know who I am. So let me start putting myself out there a little bit more. If someone drops me a comment to something I've shared, something I'm passionate about, some piece of information I've shared, let me connect with them. Let me ask them questions. Let me get in the DMs, go for a coffee, a virtual coffee, whatever it is. It's really about swimming where you are, if you will. And you said something as well in your story there about your first client coming with you being somebody that you've worked with before. This is such an undervalued thing in starting your own business that I think so many people are afraid to look at. I mean, it's a very broad generalization, but I think a lot of people, and like myself included, you think you've got to put down one workplace or one thing, one career, and then go and start your own thing completely cold. But communicating with clients, being open with the business that you're working for, the people that work for it, and saying, hey, I want to do my own thing. Like, how do you feel about this? Is there a client? Is there an option to develop a consulting business off the back of the place that you're already working? Is there a partnership you could enter into with the person who employs you or one of the partners of that business? There are so many places that we can swim that we're already in. You know what I mean?
Yeah, all the networks you need are probably already around you. You're just not capitalizing on them. The thing is, if you give value to people, if you look at every interaction, how can you add value to them, that it just comes back to you tenfold. It's just the way that reciprocal, especially if you're around the right people, that I can't say the word, reciprocity. You know that one? The word where it's reciprocal?
I'm not going to try.
Yeah, it's actually a really hard word. Yep, just discovered that. But going back, you adding value to them, they're going to want to help you. And if they see you're doing it from a good place and you want to help them as well, those people are already around you. I have a thing that I say to my team. I want you to just go through your LinkedIn and I want you to see exactly what you said. Who's commenting? Who are people? I want you to spend an hour through and just go through and see who did you really enjoy working with that you've worked with before. I don't care if they're in a role of hiring. I don't care. All of that. Just have a coffee with them. Catch up with them, see what they're up to. Because again, what short-sightedness often happens in business is you look at a person when you catch up with them about if there is that immediate value that you can get or that immediate transaction that might be made. If they are not the decision maker, they could be 3 or 4 steps away from the decision maker. And you're never going to know that until you have a cup of coffee.
And you never know where they're going to end up in 2 months, 2 years. This is absolutely a long game. I think that's excellent advice. Now, one area I think about a lot with business, and a theme that comes through a lot with this podcast and the amazing business owners I have the pleasure of speaking to for the listener, is the old business planning versus business doing, and how much changes if you have a business plan and you start to execute on it, how much changes in that, and how much value there is in just having a little bit of a sunrise vision, a little bit of an idea about where you're going, and then just getting started and allowing your business to reveal itself to you as you get started. Could you talk to me a little bit about how your business has changed in the years you've been operating?
Doing a business plan did my head in because everyone told me that was the first thing I needed to do. Okay. And I don't know if that's great advice. I'm going to be honest. I still don't know if that's great advice because your business plan changes so much. And how on earth you've never run a business? Okay, here's my criticism of this business planning business. You've never run a business before. Okay, you've never had to deal with cash flow. You've never had to deal with your BAS statements, your financial modelling for growth, your hiring staff, all of the juggle that goes. You don't know, and you've probably never done a business of the style that you're probably wanting to go into in the market that you're going into. More often than not, that often can be the case where you haven't done a lot of the stuff that you're going to come across. So for me, a lot of the anxiety initially around was, I need a business plan. And I don't have a plan. I did put one together. I think it was something that the government needed me to do for some sort of grant or something. And I put something together. But I think so often people don't start because they get caught up in planning. And I think so often people get scared of it. If I don't have a plan, I can't start. If I've got a vision or an idea, I can't just test it. Yes, you can. And so I think for me, if I look back now with when I started the business, I actually wanted to do recruitment with onboarding coaching. That's where it kind of all started. I was like, I feel like we need to do something to help support people when they start in a job to make sure that they are retained. And I feel like onboarding, because I had studied coaching, I feel like onboarding coaching would help. And so we tried that idea. We offered it for free for some of our clients. And while it did help, the coaching was really good to identify issues early. What I've then uncovered even more through the business is, hang on. If we're doing onboarding coaching, we're intervening too late. A lot of these businesses don't have the support mechanisms in place for the whole end-to-end process before they hire. And unfortunately, they go to hire and it doesn't work out because they haven't, there is a step-by-step formula that you can follow, to mitigate risk at each step of the hiring process. And when companies aren't doing that, that's where you're dealing with the problem at the back end. And so when I started to discover, it was just talking to more and more clients and seeing what worked and what didn't. And the other thing I was starting to see is clients that had a great employee value proposition that was communicated, clients that I got on board that could communicate that to me, that knew why people would want to work for them, that were really passionate about their business. They found it easy to hire. And they had other clients that hadn't figured that out yet. So why I tell you these stories is this is stuff I was learning as I was in business, dealing with the clients. And then my whole vision changed. The other thing that changed, so I was going to do monthly packages initially, which is what my first client was on. And then I was also going to do this onboarding coaching. I completely shifted and I said, you know what? Businesses need help with the holistic hiring process. We need to come in and go, okay, you need this role, fantastic. What's your employee value proposition? How do you communicate that? What do you do when you interview the person? What's your style? What's your approach? I'll give you some feedback on what they say about how you interview as well. All of these little steps that I discovered over time where clients were maybe not getting it great became then my value proposition is going, we help companies hire better. It's pretty simple, but I didn't know what that customer journey was when I first started.
Action creates information. It's something that has been on my Post-it, one of the 1,000 Post-it notes that I currently have strewn across my office. But it's the one that I come back to all the time, is that you're just never going to know unless you get started. And it can be, and I really appreciate this for myself, but also for other people that are in business, I really can appreciate the personal nature of that experience, because with putting a business out into the world, there isn't a separation between self and business. And so if you go out to market and you're really active, being like on LinkedIn or wherever it is, I'm doing this and this is what I'm doing, and you're kind of like really backing it in, but then something happens and something changes through the action and you've got, I actually need to pivot, I need to shift now. And maybe that might be a little bit different to what I originally put out there. That can be a really personally challenging experience to pivot in public. And I mean, I couldn't have done that any more times if I tried. 2 years ago, I was a ceramicist,
I love it.
I mean, I'm still a ceramicist at heart, but that's something I picked up after 13 years in the media industry. And, all of a sudden I'm doing this and then I'm doing this. And, that kind of experience of changing and that confidence that comes from, oh, look, I've given this a go and now I know that that's not quite right. So let me rewrite my website. Let me rewrite my offering. Let me go to market in a different way. Let me do something completely new, right down to let me do something that's a pivot within my business, is a really personally challenging experience until you get used to it. And I found now that I'll just change my mind anytime I feel like it. Let me just rework this website. But how has that experience been for you? That sort of personal undoing, without putting words in your mouth, but that experience of your personal self through this process?
You take it personally when you have an idea in a business and people aren't buying your idea. So that's the first thing. And I think a lot of people can resonate with that. When you go to the market, you're like, oh, I have this great idea. I have the vision. I know, for me, it was like, companies are going to love this monthly package. They're going to love it. I know what they need. I'm going to give them what they need. They don't necessarily want it, but I know they need it. So I'm going to go in there with that. That was where I went in. And then I thought, onboarding coaching, what a great thing to do. That extra support's going to. So I had this vision. And then this is where I got frustrated. I was like, why doesn't anybody want this? And then I started to think, is it me? Where have I gone wrong here? Because I know what we've got is amazing. I know the results that we achieve. And I keep hearing from our clients that they're happy. But why is this idea not taking off? And to be honest, sometimes it's just not the right idea. And that was what happened to me. The economy changed as well. So what we started to see is businesses aren't in necessarily, a lot of the roles we get through at the moment are through restructures, or there are some businesses in growth, but it's not I wouldn't call it a high growth period for all businesses. So the monthly package that I initially pitched or thought of, I had thought of at a time when businesses were struggling. They were growing at a rapid rate. After COVID, they were trying to get more staff. They needed help with hiring volume staff at a reasonable rate and a quality service. And then I think if you don't get too attached to that idea, if you're able to, as you said, pivot and take the ego out of it, because it's not about you, it's about what the market needs and what the market wants. And that's the biggest thing I've learned as well. I'm happy to pivot. When we started to do what I call retained search and executive search. So executive is when we do general manager positions, and retained we can do anything from, one of my staff's doing an office management position through to a project manager, depending on what the client needs. Our operations manager is what we would call retained. The only real difference is executives when we do general managers, as an example. What I cottoned on to quickly is that I'd pitch them this other idea and they go, and then I'd say, and then we do this other thing. And then they go, tell me more about that. And I'm like, oh yeah, well that's executive search. You pay up front. We do this. We do a long list, a short list. And I'd go through what we did, and they'd wanted that. They wanted that. They're like, oh my gosh, I love this. We need to dig deep and get the right person. So this is great. This is great. And nobody was doing it really in the industry we're operated in much at all. In the construction, engineering and heavy industry markets, people weren't doing that as much because agencies were making more money by turning over more transactions, right? Rather than charging potentially a higher fee for a higher value service. So once I landed on that, it aligned with my values because I like doing a high quality service and I like placing the right person in the right role at the right time. That's just what I'm driven by. And then the second thing that it did when I really landed on what I wanted to do is that when your values are in alignment with what you're doing, you believe in it more, you're able to handle the knocks a little bit better. But it's like good 6 months there where I was like, nobody loves my idea and I don't know why. What's wrong with them?
You mentioned before woo-woo. I'd love a bit of woo-woo. And I think there is an element in business where if it's not quite working yet, you are being redirected for a purpose. It's getting you closer to what you're actually meant to be doing. Even if then you create something or you create a new portion of your business and you follow it and you get some wins and it still doesn't quite click over, it's all pushing you towards something. And it only happens by creating that action in the first instance and then working through what it is. Like there's no end goal with this thing, so is our end goal just to create big companies so that we can be acquired for millions and millions of dollars? Sounds fantastic. But then what else do we build? Then what else do we do? Then how else do we serve? And I think moving from that unicorn business, it's going to be amazing, it's going to be successful, and I can kick back with a mojito on the beach, or in my instance, a virgin mojito, sober life, but kicking back, and doing nothing while our business just thrives. It's about discovering yourself through the process of creating a business as well. And I think that's what's so exciting about this experience.
And I think people are told, there's a lot of the narrative around the entrepreneurs that it's like you start a business and hey, you can do this online course and you'll make all the money and you'll never have to work in your business again. Or, hey, you can do, there's a lot of that narrative around you start a business, everything turns out hunky-dory, someone else runs it for you and retire to the Bahamas. Whereas the reality is you start a business and you better damn well enjoy the journey. If you don't enjoy what you do in running a business, don't do it. You should enjoy the creating of something, the innovating every day, the uncovering new ways of doing things and negotiating. You should enjoy that so much so that the end goal isn't necessarily to get out of the business, but to enjoy the journey of while you grow and build the business.
Oh, speak my language, gal. If anyone, listener, I feel like if you've chosen this podcast, this is not you. So, there's that side of it as well, because we don't pull any punches. But if you think starting a business means more time or less to do, absolutely wrong. I mean, when I left my one job that I had back when I was in commercial media, when I left that one job, I took on 7 at least, and it just evolves. As my business building goes on, it just gets bigger and different, and new roles come into place. So yes, I couldn't agree more. A wonderful woman I spoke to recently called Mia, she calls them megaphoners. It's like the 7-figure megaphoners that are like, do my course to learn how to do a course and you will be rich forever.
Yeah. Yes. You'll never have to work again, and you can sit at home and make multi-millions. Look, this is what I did. That sort of narrative is damaging, because people think that that's the reality as well. And the other thing is, if it's your own business and you enjoy the journey, then it's easy to do the rest of the stuff like the brand and things like that. And what I learned when I was a singer, I found it very hard to create a brand as a singer. I had a jazz voice, I liked folk, they wanted an R&B singer, and they were trying to put me in this box, right? And I was like, but that's not me. I know you need a brand to market me as a musician, but I love music because I like creating music I like. And so I felt that turmoil. But whereas now it's my business, my brand is me. The business is underpinning my values. So I feel a real contentment in that, and I feel okay with that. And even though it's like I'm still marketing myself, not marketing myself as a singer, I'm marketing myself as a business leader and as a service provider. But because the values are aligned and it's my choice, what values I have in the business, and our team inputs those values too, it's just an easier and more enjoyable journey.
I want to talk a little bit about creating your podcast. Podcast conversation is my favorite conversation. So listeners probably like, Kim, we're already listening to a podcast. You don't need to talk about podcasts on a podcast. But I think they're just the most fantastic medium for both self-expression, but also for both marketing initiatives, for connectivity, for engagement, for providing value. So big fan, and I'm naturally going to ask you about it. What was the experience like? How has the experience been for you crafting it, sharing it, growing it, all of those things?
I've loved it. When I started, I called it my passion project. I don't do that anymore because I now recognize that the podcast leads to a lot of other stuff that benefits the business. And so it is still a passion project, yes, but that's not what I have it in my mind as now. When I started the podcast, I feel like it was because, so when I was at home with COVID and I had young children at home, I wanted to start it. I had the musings in starting a business back then, but there was no one I could hear back then, in who I was listening to and things like that was speaking to me and that had been through my journey. And so I sort of thought, I have access to a lot of people that could benefit others that might be in the same position as me. Every different person that you listen to, learn from, connect with, you gain. I learn just as much interviewing them as a guest as I know the people do that listen to the podcast, because there's always a couple of takeaways that you have from those episodes. I've really liked it. I also did a year of marketing and journalism at university, and I feel like that wasn't a waste. Thank you, Hex. Like I thought, well, at least I did some form of something with the degree for 1 year. That was a benefit. But honestly, the podcast itself, it's also about what you do with the relationships that you create. So maintaining those relationships that you build with people on the podcast. And to me, I'm not a lover of small talk. I struggle. School pickup, I'm like, oh, they're going to say, how am I and how's the weather? Oh, I do like to talk deep. My husband and I have a coffee every day and chat about the deepest things, the world, I love that. That's how I think. And so for me, getting on a podcast and talking to people about real stuff, cutting out the bullshit and being honest and kind of, it's almost like that's why you listen to a podcast. It's like a therapy session sometimes, because you're feeling this person go through all this stuff that you might be going through but maybe not talking about or haven't acknowledged yet. That's the power of podcasts. And you can be right in someone's living room. You can be right in someone's, most personal space and moments, and whatever you can do or get from a guest can really change the trajectory of their life. And that's what I love about it.
Speaking my language. This is absolutely it. And, you know, I can relate to a lot of what you say there, particularly with the small talk versus the deep talk at the kitchen table. Very similar in my household. We will get into existential crisis and evolutionary perspectives, just a million topics in our day-to-day conversation. And, you know, I think having real conversations is one fantastic benefit from podding. And to your point, connectivity, but making a difference in someone's life is really quite special. And amen to the marketing and journalism. You kind of can't podcast unless you love marketing, because Lord, we need to promote the hell out of them to find those ears that need them.
Marketing and business development I do like. I'm really interested in them, and I actually really did enjoy marketing. It was only then when I did psychology electives that I really was like, oh, I'm hooked on this. I need to figure out how people think. I always really enjoyed people in general. I'm a people person. And so marketing is still linked with all that. It's all consumer behavior. It's all like, know, like, trust. Why do people buy from who they do? The Coke, Pepsi, all that sort of stuff fascinates me. So I am interested in it, although very far from an expert. So it took me a very long time to learn that. And I invested in marketing very early before I could afford to. Because I wasn't an expert in marketing. I paid for my website to be done. I did not have the money to do this. I paid for some help with social media and our branding, all that sort of stuff, and it's paid dividends. I do know that clients do make comments about the brand. I have clients all the time will say, I love what you're putting out in the socials. I love that article. They do notice if you're providing value. For Karan Co, we put out articles and recruitment trends and information and advice for people hiring. But then on Building Doors, we do cutting down into reels, the key parts of the episodes, quotes that we really liked, promoting the guests, promoting their book, using that platform to give people inspiration, because Building Doors is all around uncovering what's possible from you, because it's from the quote is, if opportunity doesn't knock, build a door. There is no one way or version of success. So I interview people from a variety of different pathways and find out how they built doors, how they created their own success. And I think what I learned through that process is there's from the person who's done 29 degrees through to the guy that's founded an energy business, through to the best-selling author, as an example. How different are all they? They're all different, but there is a commonality there that they created a life out of what they love and what they want to do. And if it's possible for them, it's possible for others.
Absolutely love it, and agree with you that making that investment into branding, brand tone, how you share, all of those things is never wasted. It's scary to take that sort of leap, particularly if you're somebody who feels as though you have the skill set to do it yourself. I can speak from personal experience with that. Having the background that I do, I feel like I can do everything I need to do, but then having outsourced a few elements now, I'm like, oh, that perspective, having someone that's not so closely linked to the business that you're talking about and promoting really empowers you and gives you a sense of confidence in what you're sharing and putting out in the world. And it stops you from looking at the spacing between this word versus this word and this letter and all of those silly little differentials that we get stuck into in how we promote our businesses.
One thing I always say to myself, just because you can doesn't mean you should. So you can do it, but is it a revenue generating activity? Do you make more money doing that? Like, that's the hard part too, because I feel like as a business owner, you think, well, I can do all this stuff. I don't want to pay someone else to do it. I can do it. I can figure out at night how to code my accounts and do the BAS myself. Like, I don't want to pay someone. And that is the hard journey, isn't it? To kind of go, I can do it, but I can't do everything. So like, where are my skill sets and that what I bring to the table that turns the needle and generates revenue and profit? And then if I do enough of that and generate enough of the green stuff, then what do I do around where I can outsource? And that is, I think, again, the other journey that's really difficult when you grow a business.
Oh, it's absolutely a tightrope, isn't it? It's like, I really don't want to pay for this because revenue, like we're all like we live in a capitalist society, like we need to make revenue. It's like, if I spend this, I don't have this. Am I going to be able to make this back? Is it going to grow enough? It's a risk. Everything is a risk.
And it's also amazing that you've got that marketing, that would be so handy, having that marketing background, because you already kind of know, like for me, I had to get a lot of advice. Like I hired coaches. I do remember spending a lot more than I should have on consultants in my first year though. So baby, my accountant's like, you spent a lot on consulting fees. I was like, yes, because I've never run a business before. And there are a lot of people around me that have. And no, I've never marketed a business or built a website. So there's that. Some people will do it themselves, and go down that path and they build their own website and they do it all. And others like me will go at it like bat out of hell and just kind of go, okay, I'm going to hire the people to help me do what I need and trust that if I'm doing that, then me doing the work that I do will generate enough revenue to grow and continue to grow our business. It worked. It did work, but it's not for everyone. It's not for the faint-hearted.
That should be the title of this episode. Where do you want your business to grow to? What's your vision for it?
I thought a lot about this. I do see it's in my mind. 10 of us in the team. So I do see us as being still, I want to stay boutique. I love that boutique, high touch, really servicing clients and knowing the business. And I see us being all around Australia, 10 of us. The revenue, how long is a piece of string? It'd be great to sort of have the 10 mil, like sort of kicking along revenue. And I think for me, I'm not necessarily driven by the money, although the money is great. We've got a really good life and a comfortable life already. It's not necessarily the money that drives me, but it's having this like vehicle or this business that's bigger than you, that helps all these clients, that feeds these families. Like that's for me the kind of exciting part. And then the profits and what that can do for your life and things like that is obviously the gravy, right? It's the gravy of the work and the heart and soul that you put in. But that's kind of the end goal, is getting there and growing us to the point where we've got the career coaching program as part of the business to help people and then be able to help people at their most vulnerable if they're going through a restructure or a career transition. So I've got that side, and then the other side will be purely retained and executive search. So I know I have the vision. It's about steering the ship there.
Now, the promise of this podcast is a little bit of a look inside the business in real terms, without the headlines, without the PRable, this is what I did and this is how you can do it, without smoothing over the shitty stuff, because shitty stuff is inevitable through the process. And that is absolutely a gift to give to the listener, to allow that sharing. It helps so much. It helps me so much to connect with other business owners and understand that what I'm going through is very normal, to understand that there's going to be more of it and it probably isn't going to stop, and to just get comfortable with that. It's a real gift to give to the listener as well. And so in return, how can the listener and I support you to grow?
I would just love, honestly, one of the main things is listening to the podcast and leaving a review would be lovely. If you like it and you leave a review, we all love that in podcasts. It honestly takes you 2 minutes, but it's so huge for us when you leave a review. It fills our hearts with glee that somebody's got something out of the episode, and it helps us get more listeners. So Building Doors podcast, that would be great. And if you know somebody that is hiring and they're struggling, reach out to us at Karan Co. Join up on LinkedIn. Even if you're not hiring, just join on LinkedIn and follow Karan Co. and you can just learn more about some of the common tips, tricks. We're always sharing articles and insights and ideas on how you can improve your own hiring processes. So those are just a couple of ways that you can support us. Thank you for offering.
Of course, I'm going to have the links to the pod and to your website in the show notes so that the listener can go and get around it. I could not agree more that supporting each other, and whatever the opposite of tall popper syndrome, dare I say it, whatever the opposite is of that, is what we need to be here for. If we are enjoying something, if we think we can help somebody else, let's absolutely do it, because it comes back like tenfold, right back to the beginning of this episode. Kindness should be the thing that we employ every day, even when we're frustrated, even when we're tired, even when we don't feel like we're getting very many wins. If you can pump someone else up a little bit, let's just do it, hey? Like it just helps so much in this gig. We need some wins. Sometimes we just need to give ourselves some wins. So I love that. And listener, I'm a huge fan of the reviews. So get around the reviews. But it has been so fantastic to chat with you today, Lauren. It has been a privilege to hear your story. So thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Kim. It was awesome and really enjoyed it.
Thank you for listening to Unemployed and Afraid, the podcast for small business builders with your host, me, Kim Curtin. If you love it, you can say thanks with a star rating and a review. And of course, join the community on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Find us at Unemployed and Afraid wherever you're hanging out, and I'll see you there.